Welcome back. It's been a while. Welcome back to the Amoda Maa podcast. My name is Kavi, as you know, and today we are delighted to have a special guest with us all the way from Chicago, David Ellzey. Welcome, David.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be with you both.
Thank you.
Hi, David.
And Amoda, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. Okay, so today we're going to dive into a juicy subject that is tentatively titled The Relationship Between Art, Stillness, and Awakened Consciousness. We are going to largely improvise this conversation. We've known David for, well, I've known David. David didn't know me, but David and Amoda met at the Science and Nonduality conference, I think 1 or 2 years running. And that would have been in about 2016, I think, 2015, 2016, some past date somewhere. And there was a synergy then. So we're going to carry on that synergy. Both of these two are rooted in what could be called non-dual consciousness, awakened consciousness, stillness and silence, and speak and do their respective art forms, which we'll come to in a second, from that deepest place. So the conversation is relevant to expression from the deepest. Let me just talk a little bit about David. When we actually sent David this subject, art, stillness, and awakened consciousness, he replied, "It could not be more perfect. My experience on stage for a career, including studying mime with a Kabbalistic mystic, initiated my study and exploration of emptiness and fullness in my teens as a foundation for being on stage and in every moment forward of this amazing existence." David is a coach, a speaker, mime artist, storyteller, author, and all of these aspects, all of these doingnesses are steeped in the non-dual realization. Amoda, of course, we know very well. So I think I've laid out some of the ground a bit clumsily, but some of the ground is laid out there. I do want to discuss stillness at some point as the foundation for all of this activity in the world. But I think if it's okay with you, Amoda, we're going to start by kind of handing it over to David to talk a little bit about how you started, how mime fitted in with your kind of movements, or it kick-started something, where it's got to then, and what you do.
When you ask about when it began, you mentioned my teens before. And when I was 14, I had a sense of the cosmos. I looked into the stars one night and I just felt presence. I felt something that could not be named and began to write prose to it, saying, "I don't know you, I don't know who you are or what you are, but give me more clues." And so it's been an essential component of my curiosity about existence for a long time. And then I learned of a mime when I was 17, a teacher of Kabbalistic trainings, mysticism, and which I would venture to say was essentially the exploration of the invisible, becoming visible through the artist on an empty stage. And by that, it means all things. The wind, learning to be the wind, to be a leaf, to be the tree, to be the person chopping down the tree and the bird flying by. In order for me as a performer, as an artist, to be all those things, I have to be empty. Because if I'm holding on to any sense of, oh, I'm a man, how am I going to be a tree? Then I'm limited. And so my teacher, Samuel Avital, I want to pay respects to him and mention him. He's still around and still, in fact, I spoke to him a couple of days ago because I'm sensing a deeper experience of existence still. And he was an integral part of when I began this journey of embodying on stage and therefore equally in life this mystery of the invisible becoming visible. So I called him and said, "Samuel, I'm having some new discoveries." And he's a little man from Morocco. And he has this accent. He talks like Francis almost. But So we had a beautiful conversation, and I guess I'm trying to bring this back around to complete for you that mime became something for me for about 25 years professionally on stages and in events. And I was at the United Nations peace event down in Costa Rica and at Hiroshima on an anniversary of the dropping of the bomb. And I brought my mime into the world. So it was an integral part of expressing my heart and peace, and has remained. And even when I'm teaching or talking about how the mind creates something illusory that limits us, it's like something that seems very solid, right? It's very real, and we defend it. We say, yeah, but over here, my dad yelled at me. And, we defend this nothingness that we're holding up. And this work about awakening isn't an orange robe on a mountaintop for me. It's awakening to how we're holding ourselves in illusory thinking to limit us. And when we put it down, we're free. Or we're free even around that which appears to be a limit. So mime became just an integral translation into all that I do, both as a coach or teaching or writing. So it's still integrated in my life, but I'm not professionally that anymore.
Wow. Was that just, I must ask, where was that the resolution at that early age of self-consciousness?
I don't think that happened until I was about 28. I was in a silent retreat with Michael Beckwith. I studied with him for about 10 years as well as a practitioner and stuff of science of mind and awakened consciousness. And we were on a silent retreat, and I remember going through a meditation, and suddenly it felt like, the mind will create images to make sense of this. And it felt like there was a dropping on stage. You have the trap door. And inside me, I felt like I fell through into both the cosmos and nothing. And I still felt the body existed, but it wasn't me. And there was just this kind of realization of I was actually that which I observed when I was 14 years old. That presence, awareness, that cosmic, that was actually what I am. So that was in trying to answer your question here, that was when that realization that I am that which seemed mysterious, I am also an expression of that. And that was at age 28.
Wow. And did that change? Even did that deepen even more? Did that change, your expression, the depth for your expression?
Well, it's funny. I'm answering both as a performer at that time because I was performing. That was my profession, was acting and performing on stage and in TV and film and stuff. So the only way that I can say is that it changed was the way that I would have to explain this is those glimpses at 14 and 28 sort of were putting roots into the soil of my being, of my soul, that there's something here that's mysterious and unbound. So knowing that was what was happening while I was living daily life, having crushes, having my heart broken, just hoping I got the next job. I was living daily, regular life. Not a profoundly awakened person, just profoundly awake to the mystery that permeated all of this and not understanding it yet. So that continues to deepen still today. It's a progressive sense of
yes, it's an alive movement. It's not a dead thing, obviously.
Yeah, I would only venture to clarify that it's not that progressive is actually the only reality. It's progressively deepening in what I know to be without depth, right? Without distance.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. Amazing, beautiful to hear that story. Beautiful. Amoda, where does this land in you? How does this relate to what to what your experience is, both as I mean, I know you very well, and I know speaking. When you started speaking in satsangs, in meetings, from a place of the deepest stillness. You had no notes, and there was no script. That's satsang is actually one of the ultimate improvisations in that sense, because of the silence within, but also your writing, the place that your writing comes from is being talked about here. So where does all this land in you?
Well, if I can backtrack a little bit, the thing that struck me when you were speaking, David, was you spoke about the sort of experience, again, like you said, the mind puts pictures and descriptions on it. The experience isn't actually that, but you spoke about the trapdoor and kind of falling through it into what the infinite void, or maybe I'm putting words onto it now, but that struck me as resonant with my experience of awakening, where I fell into the void. I merged with the void of being, with the infinite, and I disappeared into that, and that was if you like, the portal, or the blip, I call it, in consciousness that changed everything, and so that was very resonant. And then it filters into the everyday, and then filtered into the expression of satsang and writing in my case. But satsang, when I started to speak in public sometime afterwards, was so radically different to what I was trained to do as an academic, which was learn, read, write, and teach from knowledge. That was it. Yeah. So I had come from that background years before it had sort of imploded, but I still had a tendency to that, and especially in speaking and even writing to some degree, not quite as much of a to that extent, but I still brought the need to have a format, the need to have something fixed, the need to have a structure and a template.
Yeah.
Partly for my own safety, and partly, that's what I'd been trained to do. And then satsang, many years later, there was nothing, not a single shred of knowledge to stand on. No language, no words. Now, I didn't have a teacher. I wasn't around a teacher. I had some period of time in Osho's, what I call Osho's frequency field, but I didn't have a direct teacher. I certainly didn't have a non-dual teacher. So I didn't actually have any of the languaging, any of the pointers, none of that. So I was really in the unknown. And so when I first started speaking, and actually the early days in Sand was part of that, it was so like just falling. Every word was falling. Every word arose out of not knowing and silence. I didn't actually know where it was going. So it was sort of, I would say it was seemingly ungrounded, but I'd fallen into the groundless anyway. So on one level, there was on a human level, there was like a kind of discomfort. And then on another level, there was a total trust in that. So that really changed things for me in terms of expression, in terms of speaking in public, and in terms of writing as well. My writing changed too.
When you say change, that changed, do you mean the realization that it feels like it's nothing, but actually you began to trust it on some level? Or when you say it changed your writing?
It got me out of the way. It was like I wasn't there. So it's, and there's actually no struggle with it. There's no effort in it. There's nobody here trying to get it right, or trying to pull on some, bag of knowledge that I might have carried with me, or knowing. Of course, it must filter in through that. Yeah, it filters in through the vehicle and it's knowing, but it's from a whole other dimension within. So it's actually a very, I experience it as a divine dance, a divine communion.
Mm. Have you see, well, as you're talking, you both, one of the things that strikes me is you've both, and this is essential to everything that's being talked about, to become either comfortable with the unknown, with leading, with and that doesn't just come instantly. In my experience, actually, that has to be learned, because we were talking earlier about the self wants to reconstitute, and so in what you're talking about, David, and what you're talking about, Amoda, is largely being with other people as well. And it's one thing improvising on one's own, but actually to be on a stage or in a group of a lot of people, and then to still be able to honor or keep falling or lead from the unknown is a thing, huh?
If I may jump in, there's a small reframing, and yet I think a profound reframing of what you're proposing, Kavi, is that it's less needing to do anything, and it's a disappearance of the me that was doing anything.
Yeah.
And the appearance then is consciousness or unbound potentiality. Like when you said a minute ago, Amoda, when you said it was like nothing, the feeling, the human feeling was I'm in nothing. And by that, the beautiful irony was the same with me on stage as a mime, was because of the nothingness, I therefore have everything available. Mm. And that's a very different feeling for us on an egoic level, where we're used to all our fixed ideas of self and identity and roles we play. And so, Kavi, the thing is that for me, what's really clear to me, and in the techniques that I use to support people in the Sedona method processes of letting go or welcoming or seeing through, the idea is all that we need to do is see through or let go of that which is the illusory self, and that which is the full self is revealed. And I mean on a human level. It's not an esoteric abstraction I'm talking about. So I get to teach more from there. In fact, at one of the conferences, the SAND conferences, I remember maybe my last one before COVID and all that, I remember being at home, and usually when I'm at home preparing for SAND, I'm writing, because I would be on stage performing something or teaching something. And in the main hall, I remember this one year, I usually get ideas at home when my eyes are still closed and I'm waking up. I just make space, and oftentimes I'll get the idea for what needs to happen or the topic. But on this year, I got nothing. I was at home, and I've done this long enough to trust. And I thought, well, I'll get it, maybe on the plane. And nothing came. And then I got to the hotel, and maybe you guys know Sergio Baroni. He's a dear friend, and we were rooming, and I said, Sergio, I have no clue what I'm going to do tomorrow. He said, you'll know. It's like, I guess, okay. And I woke up the next morning, and I still didn't know, the day of the performance. And I thought, wow, how interesting. I'm supposed to not know, and I'm going to do this with them. So I got on stage, and I said, so I'm going to give you all a 15-minute performance, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Are you ready for this? And I did a 15-minute performance, and I asked Ron, who was the tech.
Yeah, we know Ron. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ron, I went up to him and I did say, give me 3 minutes of music. Actually play 3 pieces of music for like 3 seconds. I'm going to pick one of them and then play it when I choose to perform. And I'll improvise movement into a story. And that'll be what will happen. So he gave me a piece of music. I said, that one. And I improvised, but I started by telling everyone I really have no clue what we're about to do together. And I loved it. And it's this quality of trust that in the emptiness of the stage, everything is there. So my body had to be capable also embodying that belief system or that knowingness. to allow it to move into whatever it was going, like it's doing its own thing right now. I don't know, this comes here, so now there's a bird, but I didn't plan to do a bird today for you. So what I do know is the vehicle is well trained. So that is useful for me because I trust it.
Yes.
But in terms of what informs it, that is a joy for me not to know. It's like mutual discovery in each moment.
Yes. I have that experience writing and speaking as well in public. I don't prepare anything. In fact, the more empty and not knowing I am, like you say, the more feels like there's an intelligence that informs the moment, and it becomes a very beautiful experience. It's not stressful. It's not self-conscious. It's not anything. And so whether it's writing or that, and I used to experience that dancing when I used to dance. I think that's it.
You know, Kavi, in the title that you both decided on, stillness is one of the words. And to me, what we're talking about, Amoda, is there's a stillness in the not knowing. And that's what the emptiness is. It's a absence of mind and fear and identity. And so the stillness is very sweet in the not knowing, if there's a comfort with it. For me, that's where the stillness is it's that out of which the rest comes.
Yes. And if the veil of knowledge-based mind as our identity has come undone, then there's no discomfort in the silence,
right?
In the stillness. There's only discomfort in the not knowing and the stillness if there's still an identity with that, and therefore that becomes almost the impediment that makes it, or the boundary that makes it uncomfortable. But if it's not there, then it's not uncomfortable. There's no discomfort. Like you say, it's very sweet. It's very sweet.
If you had Catherine Ingram on, I'm sure she's talked about these qualities of awakening. And for me, sweetness is one of the qualities. Because even Samuel, I still get teary-eyed when I think about him, because he was the first one to see me, to really see inside me. And he had this fierceness about him, but he had this glimmer in his eye. And he was looking in my eye, said, "David, no, don't do it, just do it." And and he'd be mad at me, but he was like, "You know what I'm talking about. Do it." It was before I knew that I knew. But he saw it, and I knew that he saw this in me before I did it, but I knew that he knew before I knew. So it was like I was awake to know that, even though I went to my apartment and cried because he had yelled at me. And the veterans of his students came in and said, "Oh, David, he loves you. That's why he's mad at you." Like, okay, I guess that's okay. Because I was still a young, impressionable someone. But yeah.
And do you find that it's the same not knowing, is the same stillness that informs your work as a coach or as a speaker, or these other roles that you may have?
Yes, absolutely. Interestingly, the parallel to my body being trained as a mime and feeling safe walking on stage without knowing what I'm going to do, but I'm bringing my vehicle and I know that it's very capable of unveiling something because it's done it for many years. The same as a coach or teacher or sharing of information is I've done this for a long, long time. So I pretty much know that I can, number one, and that the less that I'm here, the more those techniques and tools and gifts that I'm imbued with just as attributes of this personality, they'll do what they need to do. So
Yes.
it's like the same vehicle of the body performing the same vehicle of this persona will do what it needs to do, the less I'm trying to control from an identity of teacher, coach, or guide. So it's the same emptiness. It just is, I call it a different storefront.
Yeah.
But I still have a sense inside of the quiet, generally.
Okay. Well, where can we push this now? Where can we allow this? Allow this to deepen.
One thing that came up for me as you were speaking, Amoda, is what we're talking about, to me, begs the question of when we're not feeling the stillness and the emptiness and the absence of a limited sense of a me, when we are called, because I think of this as a calling, spiritual calling. There's a calling inside, which is the essence of truth. That's just calling the persona to remember, or calling itself, calling it out, like come home. There's work that has to be done on some level. And in satsang or teaching or coaching, I think of the role, the highest role, if you will, of an important teacher, coach, or whatever, is the one that helps process the one who's in the parts of us that are still illusory, that we're believing in, students or coaching or ourselves. Like, how do we do that? It's an intriguing, I'd like to just open the floor to you. In satsang, there's mostly, in my witnessing or my experience, the teacher or the guide or the whoever's speaking in the meeting is helping unravel the mind and body, the mind-body experience to a deeper understanding. And that's what I kind of think is on the table, because a lot of people bow to the guru as if they have the power to do something, the power to fix. And I don't know, this is why I'm enjoying our conversation. It feels like maybe you and I are on a similar understanding that we don't have the power to do that, but we are in a position of guiding to see through the veil of limited self-identity. And that I have tools like the Sedona method or self-inquiry or breath work, sometimes movement. These are all realms that I explore uncovering through. So I'm just putting it on the table, because that feels like the next step for how do we get to that sense of trust, the emptiness,
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't know the
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. So let's see what comes. I absolutely, yeah, I'm with you. That I don't think there is a sort of transmission of any, power or energy that can fix anyone or undo them or any of that business. So I certainly don't take up that attitude or role. And for me, having a lot of skills, which I seem somewhere in the distant past, like breath work and so on, I think all of that is very valuable. For me, that's all fallen away. Not just for me personally, but in the work I do. I don't have anything. I don't have a bag of tools to draw on. And maybe they would be valuable at times, but it doesn't seem to be the way that the unknown intelligence wants to move in this.
Yeah.
It just doesn't move in that direction. I honestly don't know what it is that supports and guides people in the work that I do. Something must, because they come back and come back. I think it's if I have to kind of, say it's something, I think it's, God, it's so unspeakable. I think it's a clear reflection somehow, not just in words, but including words, but in the energy field that seems to reflect back where the veils are.
Yeah.
there's clear seeing here. It's not tainted by the self. And in that, it can reflect back to another, that which is not limited by identity, not limited by narratives in the other. How that happens, I really don't know. And then what that actually means in plain language is a kind of pointing, a sort of spontaneous dialogue emerges. And there are those who, it's almost like their energy field kind of gets it, and something opens or something relaxes or something softens or something comes home. And there's those who aren't quite ready for it. So there might be a dance on a semantic or more conceptual level.
Right.
And then we have to kind of play with that for a while until there's a readiness to drop. That's really the only way I can describe it. So it's not based on anything. It's not, I don't have any skills. I don't have any method. I don't have any method of self-inquiry. I don't have any method of pointing. It just sort of arises in that way.
It's glorious. It's glorious. It's beautiful because what it says to me, not what you said, but the difference is that fundamentally we're both moved by the beauty of truth, the beauty of the truth of who we are, life, what life is, this unwordable reality. And so you and I, in a sense, or any teacher, are simply moved with whatever is their way. And that's just, I grew up, my path included ways that just seemed to wiggle into relationship with students and coaching clients. And so that's what's there. I don't think they are the things that do what we're talking about. It's the energy behind them that.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where we're not different. And yet the modes are unique,
Yes.
just like they should be, you know.
Yes. Yes.
To reach the many different people that are listening for the bell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was never any plan here to offer satsang or to speak in any public way or be a spiritual teacher. There was never any plan. There was never any path of that. And so I didn't accumulate any skills along the way. I mean, obviously I did, because like it has to come through this vehicle. The skills are what I learned on the way, or what I unlearned, or what I picked up and what I put down on my own journey. But there wasn't any conscious intention. And so it sort of emerged by itself, quite surprisingly, and then seems to have a life of its own.
And I'd like to ask both of you then, because you're both relatively kind of mature on the path, and both been doing teaching in some way for really quite a long time.
I would only fight the word mature too much, because I think we're both sort of childlike in our nature, and I'm just being playful with you, Kavi. We can act mature, but I think we're both. I certainly have a deep childlike nature.
Yeah, I was not disputing that. I'm talking about the maturity of over time. There's been a deepening, does come with time. It doesn't just happen in a moment. Something happens in a moment, but the wine ripens, or the grape, it becomes more juicy over time. And I think you've both got that. That's kind of what I'm speaking to. And so, my kind of question is there, David, you alluded to something almost that there's still something new happening within, something deeper. And so the question is for both of you in a way is, you don't teach from a fixed place. It's not fixed in that sense. Is there still ripening taking place, or is the fruit ripe?
There is no fruit.
Don't get all Zen with me.
Well, there isn't. It's fallen.
But so you understand the nature of the question. Is this it, or is there an ever the universe is ever expanding? You are the universe. Are you ever expanding?
Well, it's a paradoxical question. That's like, do we have free will? Well, the we that supposedly is separate from the universe doesn't exist. So do I, as an individual, it appears a certain way. But the absolute understanding is that I am the entire universe. So whatever's happening, that's my as the universe is. So I have free will, yes, but I as the universe, as David. It's very subtle, but it's different than I, David, separate from the universe. So to me, it's a very subtle understanding. So by the same token, your question, is there a deepening? I asked Francis that once, because after one of his talks, I had the moments where, I don't know if you know, but I'm imagining you do. There's moments where you just don't exist. There's still talking going on, but there's a sense, a glimpse of nothing speaking. And I had one of those experiences hearing Francis, and I walked up to him afterwards. I said, Francis, what's going on? Because I've had this before, and does it ever stabilize? Does it ever? And he said, "Oh, David," he said, "you're in a dynamic form body. So dynamic life is what happens. So it feels like it's changing or deepening or glimpses, and that will all happen as long as you're in the dynamic form of the body. It's not absolute, but it appears to be the changing forms. So as long as you're in a body, you likely have that kind of experience, which means hold on to nothing and just watch. And it doesn't have a meaning to it. Like, oh, that means I'm awake. Yes. Or yeah. So deepening, what I like to say is there is no deepening because there's no separate me. However, the appearance of that is enjoying living that way. So there's a deeper sense of love, or more disappearance of the veils, even the neurophysiological veils that are trained in over time, they disappear in terms of my identification with them, or the identification with them. So the deepening is less going deep and more like revealing of that, which has always been. That's how I would verbalize it.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Yeah. Amoda?
May I? Yeah, I'll add something. Not sure if it's just another way of saying that or something completely different. My experience is, if you asked me, is it deepening? My spontaneous response is no. There's no, I can't find that place. I can't find the honest, yes, it's deepening. Deepening into what? And deepening as what? I'm not saying that it's static. I'm not saying there's an arrival point. I'm not saying it's fixed, not at all. But somehow, and I know that, and Kavi, that in our teaching or my teaching, we speak about the deep all the time. We point to the deep. We speak about the deep. We talk about the deepening of awakened realization. So I'm not throwing that out. But I can't find that in my experience. What I can find, and maybe it's just the way this unique individuation is experiencing itself in the totality, is that the something that's changing, the something that is maturing, the something that is even evolving, I could say, or maybe expanding, is actually on a worldly level, not on a consciousness level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like it's almost like it's gone, the inflow, the inner movement into the nothing, which is everything, it seems to have gone as far as it can go. When nothing and everything has been realized, then, I don't mean realized, but, you know, energetically, viscerally realized, where else is there to go? But now it seems to be flowing outwards. Not that there is an out, but using language to describe the worldly interaction, it seems to be flowing out into the world. And that means there's a kind of growth, maturation, expansion, evolution on a human interacting with the world level. And that is definitely changing, or there's a sense of that moving. Does that?
Well, is that you see, that's I know you well, and I know your history. Your history has been one of not really, in many ways, dealing with the world. Yeah, you've been been inside. You were mute for a long time. You know the whole thing has been a very inner journey. And so in the the second half of your life, you've this has started happening to you to move more into the world, and that's where it's kind of that you're talking about.
Yes.
It's a very individualized experience.
Yes, I think that's just unique to this. Not unique. I'm sure others experience it, but that's how this one is experiencing it. And that movement into the world, or growth or evolution, or whatever we want to call it, or deepening, that's informed, if you like, by that which has been realized very naturally. Whereas there could be growth or evolution on a worldly level, but it's not informed by that. It'd be informed by identity.
Right.
And this isn't. So that's very new. That's a whole new dimension, which I don't think has completed itself, if it can ever complete itself. But I feel that for me at least, is what is moving now, what is evolving, what is growing. Growing isn't the right word, but expanding.
Does that David? So how does that land with you? Because in a way, Amoda's a sort of quixotic kind of person. In a way, it was a very dysfunctional life that she lived for a very long time. Hence the, kind of schism in a way between her as a personality then and the world. So this now, what you're saying, Amoda, in a way, is that the relationship with the world is now coming. You're able to come into the world from a deeper place, meaning from that awakened consciousness place. Whereas before it was on a whole different level. It was dysfunctional. Yeah. You were dysfunctional. It was dysfunctional. So, but has that happened with you, David?
Well, first, I'm not sure that it's any different. I think that the human journey is the exact same for everyone. It's just in the sense that we are the absolute, incredible, mysterious, cosmically intelligent essence of being that is spinning the stars and keeping my cells in place so I don't fall into a blob of cells. And there's some unnameable, throughout the ages, the wisdom traditions are careful to name it because it limits it, right? There's this permeating presence that looks like all of us, and all almost 8 billion human beings, to me, are on the same journey of being that and yearning to know that, yearning to be out of the suffering or the limitations of the normal human training into limitation. And that's family, cultural, societal, national, global, media. We have training to feel limited. And I'm not creating a blame or an enemy. I'm just saying that because we're permeated, the atmosphere is permeated with limitation and perceptions of limitation. There's something wrong with us, principles, or I'm incomplete until I get the shampoo, for heaven's sake, or whatever. That all humans long for the freedom, which is their essential nature on some level. And so whether it's Amoda's journey of what she's been through that you were just sharing, and coming out more freely without the sense of the limitations of her past, it's the same for me. I had my own story. I could tell you it's not the same story, but it's the same story of being limited by my own journeys. My mother used to slam cabinet doors in other rooms because she was mad, but I was the most adored person in her life. She loved me, and I am who I am partially because of that love. But she was angry, and so I, as a boy, concluded I'd done something wrong to create that anger in the woman who was the source of my life. You know, I came through her. So she was angry, I must be responsible. So many of my relationships in my life carried that pattern of feeling I should be accused of something. And so I would find people that were accusatory. My belief system was I've done something wrong. So I had to walk through my own journey of dropping patterns to not feel guilty and be grounded in myself without apology or shame. And that's a learning I think we're all humans on some level. And when I say all humans, I know it's different. I mean, you can have tribal relationships, which are very different, where people are supported by the tribe, or I realize that. But in contemporary life,
yeah,
we have a lot of that. So I think I do have the same kind of trajectory as Amoda, in the sense of the essence of that journey of remembering a deeper sense of who I am, and learning to express that more fully through whatever I do. Just a different appearance of the story. You know?
I just think on a in the traditional sense, it's the inward journey, which we might call the coming home, or the deepening into the realization of true nature, happens in the second half of life. Yeah? There's worldly accumulation, experience, getting your hands dirty in the world, in the marketplace. And then there's the inward journey on a traditional trajectory. And then perhaps there's much more of a perhaps a falling away of worldly concerns. Yeah. Now, I don't think that's relevant anymore in our culture, in our contemporary culture. But it's like, for me, it's like flipped. It's almost the other way. The inner was not completely, but it seemed to be so inner. And then it's become quite outer in comparison. And that sort of seems to be almost not what's expected. Yeah. As a spiritual seeker and as a spiritual teacher, it's almost like one's expected to, in the conventional view, to not be in the world. And there's no more growth, there's no more evolution, there's no more maturation in that. And that's obviously not the whole story.
Well, sorry, I don't think it is the whole story too. I'm right with you. I think it's a mistake actually in the spiritual teaching realm to say that go inward and not be in the world. I think the differentiation between, it's sort of beautiful what you shared in terms of your life, because you were inward, but you were inward with whatever pain you were struggling with. And in the processing of that, as it began to drop away through whatever blessed lifetime you've been living, you began to feel more available for being seen or whatever, and expressing outward. And I think that's the mistake of a lot of spirituality, is the concept, or let me just say I don't know, it's a mistake. It could be, but I think it's more a misunderstanding that I need to only be on a mountaintop.
Yes.
That's true spirituality now to me, more and more and more, is the diminishment of the veil. It's what you were saying. I want to say this to you, Amoda. When you speak, I'm really appreciative of your earnest simplicity, because it's really beautiful. And when you talk about there's no grape ripening on the vine anymore, that's ultimately the truth that I feel I know. And there's nothing here except consciousness looking like me with glasses. That's actually what it feels like is true. So when I address your question, Kavi, it's sort of like on the relative level or on the appearing level, or as you said, Amoda, on the human level, there is this journey. But what is really moving my heart so much these days, and I will say often to tears, I'm a very sentimental guy, is this feeling of the realization that the journey is okay, but it's held in the mother's arms of the always welcoming absolute. And when we begin to realize that, it's really a deep experience rather than trying not to have a journey and trying to be the transcendent.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Very,
And that's very much your experience, Kavi, or your expression, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's the human journey.
Yeah, something extraordinary has happened to me just in the last 2 or 3 years, I would say, of a profound acceptance, of a profound love, really, of the journey, and with all of its, with everything involved in it, and all of the struggles that I've been through in my life, to come to a place where actually I have the capacity to open and accept it all, and be in the world as well, and not retreat. That's what I mean about what I said earlier about the juiciness of these conversations, because I know that that people out there, people who are seeking, people who are struggling, or imagining that you have to be one way, and that the human experience is somehow diminished or unacceptable in the spiritual seeking, is falling away now. And there are so many teachers, there are so many teachings, and we're in the West, and the mind is seeking, the searching, and people need to see how it's modeled in the modern world. That's where that's where this is. Yeah. How is it modeled? Not modeled in some manufactured way, but actually the unmanufactured way. How does it show up when you're doing this? How does it show up when you're doing that? How does it show up? As you said, David, it's a dynamic experience, the human experience. And there's an idea that dynamism disappears completely, and the dynamic life is gone. And that's just not true. But the relationship to it has changed fundamentally, right?
Mm.
Yeah, one teacher that I also knew, Lester Levinson, who created the Sedona method, used it. The techniques were just created because he needed to give the mind something to do.
Yes.
His essential teaching was you are unlimited beingness. That's it. But if you feel limited, then why don't you do these things? But ultimately, he said, I just lost my thought for a second. Kavi, you just said, he said, you do techniques until the one doing the techniques is also let go of or seen through. And so until that feels like the truth, we live, we live dynamically. But when you said it will never stop, it's a funny thought, because I don't even know whether I can claim that or not. Because in the full realization that I am only unlimited reality, it might stop. I don't know.
Yeah.
I only share from my perspective, and also my compassion, because people come to me who are all on some kind of spiritual path. I have such compassion because the pains that I've heard, I counted hours once, and it's 7,000 to 10,000 hours of coaching by now. And it's the same story.
I know. Yeah.
Something wrong about me.
Yeah. Honestly, the work that I do one-to-one with people, and it's exactly what you said. Amazing. The same thing, the same pattern. Well, there are tiny different version of the same pattern that's showing up again and again and again and again. And that has an impact. It has had an impact on me.
Yeah.
Really. So in winding up, I think I want to throw out one question and answer it however you want. It's all right. It's not too bad. Is there an art of life, or is there an art to life?
The only thing that comes to mind or comes to words is the art is to be in the world, but not of it. To experience everything, which is what we're talking about, to experience everything, to have no limit on what can be experienced as part of the human journey, because the spiritual seeker does have an idea of what should be experienced and what shouldn't be experienced when you've awakened. But to have no limit on that, to be totally in the world, to be totally human, to feel, experience everything. And it's unknown. We don't know in the next year, in the next day, what we might experience. We don't know. We actually don't know what death is like until we experience that. We don't know when we lose a loved one, because we might not have lost one yet, and so on and so on. And yet to not be of the world, to not derive our identity of that to me is it's a kind of art from the deepest, from the realization, from self-realization. That's not really an art. That's how it's lived, at least in my experience. It's the deepest knowing. It's yeah. But I think there's an art of that can almost be practiced when there hasn't been, let's say, freedom from from identity, but one's on the path. Then you can practice being in the world and not of it. And I think that is an art that can be practiced moment to moment in every experience. And that's where I think sometimes the spiritual seeker gets a little almost blinded by their own beliefs, because they think they don't have to do isn't the right word, but they don't have to navigate or surf that they can just wait for awakening to take place by some mythical special moment. But actually there is an art to practicing that, and that does start to undo the identity and allow us to be in the world, but not limited by our identity of our derived from our experience. We can have experience, we can experience, we don't have experience, but we experience, but we're not that. So there's a great freedom.
Beautiful. So for me, the idea, the pivotal question is how we define the word art. For me, in my heart, right? Art is always some quality of expression on some level. Painting, whatever mode or medium. And so if art is expression, you choose the art form, then life definitely has an art to it. But more than that, life is art, meaning it's an expression of the absolute, of the, for me, love has been more profoundly feeling like what the truth is. And by love, we have to be conscious of word usage. But to me, love means the source of all is appearingly creating. And this is an incredible art piece called the universe. And so I'm a paint. I'm a color. And then within me are multiple colors and trillions of cells coloring and creating fragrance and tones and hues. And so I am an art piece as well. And how life transforms through me into existence, if we look at in and out, then that's also art. So the question then becomes, yes, absolutely, all is art. My life is art. The question for me becomes, what is painting my life? What is it that's painting my life? From, as we talk about identities, limitations, perceptions, repetitions of old patterns, or this sense of the unknown, that paints very differently. than my fear and my fixture and my physical body shape based on protecting because of history. And when I'm letting that go, my body is just so, that's why I loved mime. Because since a boy, I love expressing through the form. I've always been fascinated. There's 29 bones here. So I'm moving 58 bones simultaneously. Just that is miraculous to me. So to master that and then create on stage and then create in life, I ideally am being inspired by the source of all art to live my life as an artistic piece.
Wow, beautiful. When I realized back in those days when I was doing the guitar stuff for Amoda's dance workshops, and there was a necessity for me to improvise for 40 minutes with a percussion player, and I was on the guitar. And every strategy that I ever had, every riff, every 12 bar, every lick, they were all there, like you said, because I'd learned them prior to that. But when I really, and it only worked, the energy connection only worked when I was absolutely empty, and I just stayed in that emptiness, actually, no matter how difficult, because in the early days it would be difficult because I was just, it was very uncomfortable for me. And then I realized that it had nothing to do with me. And I was like kind of set free on a certain level, that it was just something was happening, and I was the vehicle, if you like, for that something happening. And that changed me. So that was one of my experiences of the art, really.
In a way, to culminate in a way, is the art and the freedom of not knowing.
Yeah.
People think it's going to be something to fear, but actually it's great liberation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also hear the mystical tradition in your voice, in your eloquence, in your descriptiveness. I hear the Rumi-esqueness. I hear that, because I also devoured Rumi for about 3 years and had no idea what it was. And I just kept, I describe it actually as eating Rumi. And eventually it just sort of osmotically something came. It really fundamentally changed me. And that's referring to what you're talking about as the flute through which God would play, and God and the flute and the music as well. All of those kind of elements, which is very much a kind of Sufi-esque sort of way of talking it. So I hear that very much rooted in what you do, and I honor that, because that is very beautiful. It's my kind of language as well. Okay, I think any closing words?
I just want to say thank you. I bow to how life wanted this to happen as us, and I don't mean that to be abstract and esoteric. I really, these things happen thinking that we did them, and knowing on another level just what really wanted to happen. So I know in my heart I loved being with you all. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, David.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you, David, for joining us and jumping on in this exploration. Amoda, always thank you for your wisdom and depth, and some grace and dignity and integrity. That's part of what this is all about. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. We'll see you again. Take care. Goodbye. Thanks for watching. If you like these videos with Amoda Maa, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified of future videos, press the notification bell. It helps Amoda's channel and spreads the message. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye-bye.